Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. It is another solo episode for you guys this week. Dan is away. Unfortunately, he's not here with me to digest Villa's incredible 2-1 win away at Brighton on the road. This will unfortunately be the last Villa match review podcast until after Christmas. Can you believe it? The World Cup has just come around so quickly, and isn't it great that we get to go into that month-long process with a Villa win behind us? It's a game that, to be honest, I thought it would get away from us. I really did, and especially after that start, it's interesting how all the criticism was directed towards Olsen after that cup loss at Old Trafford, for his distribution mainly, and especially having a hand in a couple of their goals. But I think Martinez sells Dougie a bit short there. And obviously, Dougie, he's far too soft, really, and he'll know that. I'm not going to go into that in too much detail. But I do think Emmy sells him a bit short. And I was just thinking, isn't it interesting how we spent all of midweek waxing lyrical about Martinez and how much of a difference he makes in his distribution for 50 seconds in for him to do that. And then for Villa to concede in the opening minute of a Premier League game for the first time since February 2011 against Manchester United. That's incredible, isn't it? That's our earliest goal conceded in a Premier League game for, 11 years? And this is the key theme, I think, of today's sort of reviews. The differences I've seen in the two league games we've had under Emery. And I suppose you can make a case for the midweek EFL Cup game as well. The difference in mentality in the Villa boys. I don't think I've seen a Villa team for a long time in the Premier League that you look at that home game against Man United when they score a really lucky goal just before halftime. How many times have we seen Villa sides go on and fall apart in the second half and they lose that game 3-2? It's happened time and time again. But Unai's created this really quick, or seemingly created this really quick mentality change within the club where the fact that we didn't go on to not just lose that game, but we went on to score another one really early doors in the second half and see it out. And then today, to come back at the Amex, where I don't think Brighton, correct me if I'm wrong, since they've been promoted, have lost the game after scoring first, is quite remarkable, I think. And, these stats come courtesy of AVFC Stato, who I know is a listener of the podcast. He usually shouts himself out in the comments, and rightly so when we mention him. His data is incredible. So if you're listening, AVFC Stato, I'd love to know your name, mate, but thank you very much for providing this data. We've come back to win on the road, which is not something we've managed to do much, to be honest with you. So that's the first time we've come back to win an away game after conceding the opening goal since May 2021. That's a year and a half. Isn't that incredible? And these are the mentality switches that I'm talking about that you can see in Unai already, that, when you hire an elite manager, these are the things that I think separate in the league often who finishes in the top half and finishes in the bottom half, because it's these games where you manage to grind out a 2-1 result after going away from home at a team that at kickoff were placed 6th in the league. To go and do that and not just fall apart, that's an extra 3 points. And these results, I think, accumulate across the season. It's making sure that we beat United, that we don't just draw against them at Villa Park. And I know it's only early doors, and I know that we can't get carried away too quickly and perhaps thinking about the grand scheme of things and what the league table might look like. But it's hard not to when you're seeing such stark differences, I think, in the way that Villa play, and the way that we see out games, the game management today. And look, it was dirty. It was, for want of a better word, shithousing. And we've seen, Dan and I have spoken about this on the podcast, and I'd love for him to be here and get his thoughts on it, because it's one of those performances that if you're sat at Villa Park and a team is doing that to you, it drives you crazy. But to see Villa do that was really interesting, because I don't really think we have. I think we actually picked up more bookings today than in any other game in Premier League history. 7 Villa players were booked today against Brighton. Only once have we done that previously, against Chelsea in 2011. But the way that we, used the dark arts of football to see out that game was, maybe encouraging isn't the right word, because, it's not something that ideally you want to see people do against you or you have to resort to yourselves. But we can't lie that the best teams don't do that. They're the best at it, in fact, and the best managers know the best ways to, get yourselves around those situations. And Unai is right up there. Um, I don't think it was an all-time Villa performance. I wasn't wowed by the football. We didn't blow Brighton away, but what we did was, especially without a guy like Ollie, who's scored, in a lot of his recent games. He's sort of got that goalless drought behind him and has been a key man in starting both of the two Emery games that we had prior to today's kickoff. He was ill. Leon on the bench got about half an hour or so to go without those two guys and play. I said against Man United that we lacked pace and we were relying on triangles and different way to build out from the back without those 1v1 threats, more so in Bailey than in Watkins, but they're probably the two quickest outfielders that we have. Was really impressive, and we slowly got back into the game. It wasn't an immediate process after going behind so early on, but the fact that we did it at all is really interesting. John McGinn wins the penalty, who I'll agree with a lot of Villa fans who have said that today was the best game that he's had this season. And there's just lots of these different positive elements that have sort of held Villa back in the first half of the season that we seem to have got that monkey off our back now going into this World Cup break. And I don't think it can be underestimated just how important a win was today. To go into that period where so many of the lads are going to be at Bodymoor. The only lads going to Qatar, I believe, are Emi, Matty Cash, Jan Bednarek, and Leander Dendoncker. So only 3 out of the 4 are sort of nailed on starters, really. So many of the boys are going to stay at Bodymoor to have, well, I actually believe we're going to a warm weather camp in Dubai. But even better, this is an environment where Unai can really now get his message across to the players, and we can start truly taking on the way that he wants to play. And it wouldn't surprise me if we came back and we saw Villa maybe trying a new formation, a different way of playing. Maybe, it's always been a case of maybe walking before we ran. And now we're starting to get these results. We can maybe try and be a bit more expansive. Who knows when we come back? But that game on Boxing Day against Liverpool is going to be an absolute barnstorm. I'm very excited for that. But no, I mean, you can't underestimate the impact that Emmy's had on this Villa team in such a short space of time. Unai has done such a fantastic job of galvanizing this squad, picking themselves up, and as I said, instilling a mentality that we haven't seen really too much at Villa Park. Yeah, I think it's good that John played well, and I'm happy for him personally because he was back with the armband today. The away support was amazing as always, and there is a real sense of optimism now around Villa that wasn't there a month ago, and there is a belief now we're just 1 point off the top 10. I think we're like 6 points or 4 points off the top 6. Sorry, the league has really condensed, and that's what I'm talking about. These key results that can come back, and all of a sudden, I think Dan and I spoke about it at the end of last season, where obviously we lost to Watford on the opening day of last season, and we lost to them at Villa Park as well. And I think had we won those 2 games, it would have propelled us up to like 8th or something like that. And so these are the games where you can really climb up the table. And at the end of it all, you can really point to a few games and said, yeah, it's because we held on there and took 3 points instead of 1. Or in the case of the United game, as I said, turning 1 point into 3 that make the difference and that will get you up there towards the end of the season. And look, I'm not saying that we'll be chasing Europe or anything like that, but if we can finish in and around the mid-table, maybe even the top half, I think Unai can be really proud of himself because we were straight up in a relegation battle when he came in, and almost instantly within a week, it looks like those fears are a thing of the past. And that's a real relief because it's important for this project that we continue taking steps forward. But yeah, I think on that note, guys, I won't ramble on too much more. I know it's obviously a much better experience when it's me and Dan. But unfortunately, he's away today, and we didn't want to keep you guys waiting, especially after a win. There was talk of this maybe being a short. I know we mentioned it in the last podcast. No chance. After a loss, maybe. But after a win, you guys got, I was going to say the full debrief, but maybe half debrief, as we've only got half of our Villa Filler cast after all. So as we conclude this first half of the season, just want to say a massive thanks to you guys. We're now on Instagram. and TikTok. You can check out in the description the links to both of those, as well as the links to mine and Dan's personal Twitter accounts. If you don't follow them already, hit follow on all 4 of those accounts, and you'll have all of the Villa Filler content right where you want it. You guys have been amazing, and the growth has been so good. Don't worry, the content won't be stopping. We're sure the transfer rumor mill is going to keep on churning. There'll be plenty of links coming out to a lot of Villarreal players. We have a couple of friendlies. We have the Peter Whittingham Memorial game, which we're really looking forward to. That will be an amazing occasion. And Villarreal now are coming to Villa Park as well, which will be obviously an amazing experience for Unai. And who knows, a couple of those lads that we've been linked with in Villarreal might get their first Villa Park showing and want to impress just that little bit more. But yeah, don't you worry, guys. The content will be coming. We will be covering England throughout the World Cup, giving you debriefs on those games, and we'll keeping one eye on the Villa guys as well to see how Poland and Argentina and Leander Dendoncker with Belgium can perform in Qatar. So we're really looking forward to that. But in the meantime, guys, there is exactly a week, the day that this podcast comes out, until the World Cup will be underway. So have a very, very good pre-World Cup week. Make sure you've got those Panini sticker books, and we will see you for probably a World Cup preview in the next week. But until then, guys, keep yourself very safe. Follow Heart of the Holte wherever you can. Make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, leave a comment if you've enjoyed today's video, and up the Villa.